Welcome back to the Malted Man Cave. We got a little bit of an interesting setup this evening. We are without Dave, but I am here with his replacement for the evening, which is my cousin Jonathan Berge. He is a fellow whiskey aficionado, and he probably knows more about whiskey than I do. I think he's been drinking longer than I have. So, actually, before I tell you what we're going to be reviewing tonight, I'm going to let him introduce himself. He actually does a whiskey blog himself. He knows what he's talking about. He's someone that I would definitely, if I had a question, I would go to him. So without further ado, Jonathan, you want to tell maybe a little bit about yourself, your website, and then maybe how you got into single malt?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. Well, first off, my website is meadmule.com. It's meademule.com. I just started that website a few months ago, actually. It's mainly, I'm doing a lot of whiskey reviews there, some beer reviews too. I also delve in a little bit to some opinions about whatever else I feel like writing about. Sometimes politics, sometimes sports, sometimes random stuff.
He's a
and I'm kind of going to explore some other things like that in the future, but it's really mainly whiskey reviews that I'm doing there.
He's a liberal. Just kidding. We like to have good debates, me and him.
True, but there are lots of things that I'm kind of in my own little world.
And so am I, even though I tend to be
opinions.
conservative. There's some things I'm very, very on the left too, or in the middle on. So
Yeah.
just wanted to bust your balls a little bit. How did you get into Scotch?
So that's basically what the website is. I also have an Instagram account where I post a lot of pictures of whiskey and some beer. So if you're into Instagram, and you can follow me there again. It's at Mead Mule.
Awesome.
As far as how I got into whiskey, I don't really even remember when I had my first single malt. I could not tell you for sure.
Do you know what it was that you
What
had?
it was, or even which single malt it was. It was probably something like Glenlivet or Glenfiddich. I would imagine it was almost certainly one of those two. And it was years ago. But I really don't even remember when or even really why I started, why I bought my first bottle of Scotch. I drank whiskey in college, but mostly like Jack and Coke, which I think is what most young people drink, at least in college. That's what you didn't drink whiskey straight. At least I didn't.
Should we tell them about how our family is a bunch of teetotalers and how they must be ashamed of us?
Yeah, well, it's kind of changed a little bit with our generation, I think. And I mean, between you and me being into whiskey, and my brother works for a brewery, and several other people in the family certainly like to enjoy a nice drink.
I think me and Tim, and obviously if he can come, and obviously if you're still in Hilton, we're all meeting up in Hilton Head in a couple months. I think that would be awesome for us all to do a whiskey review.
Yes, that would be great. Especially if we could do it on the beach, maybe. That would be fun.
Faux show. I was actually, I don't know if you watched my last review, Jonathan, but
I did, yeah.
Did you hear my quote? At beer festival and stuff, everyone goes around with those shirts that say from, I think Benjamin Franklin. It says, "Beer is proof that God exists and He loves us." And I said
Right.
that whiskey is proof that God exists and that He loves us for sure. So our family is missing out. All right. So tonight we are going to be doing the Aberlour 12 non-chill filtered. It's a very, very decently priced whiskey, and it's actually pretty good stuff. So the ABV is 48% ABV. There is no color added. Anything else you want to add about this whiskey before we get into the nose?
Are you sure it's no color added, natural color? Did you say that? I didn't. If that could be true, but I don't know that it says that on the bottle.
You're right, and we shouldn't assume if it's not on the bottle. That's the proof in the pudding. But I'm pretty sure
it's certainly not heavily colored, like some Diageo products tend to be. But there could be a little coloring in here. I wouldn't be surprised.
I did some research, and everything I read said that there wasn't any color, but you could be right. And like I've said a million times on my reviews before, if it doesn't say it on here, you don't know for sure. So good point.
Yeah,
We don't know for
unbelievable.
sure. I'm pretty sure, but we do not know for sure. But we do know that it's non-chill filtered, and it's 48% ABV. Do you know what I know there's a little bit of bourbon cask and sherry involvement. Do you know what the ratio is? I actually didn't catch that.
I've only seen speculation. I haven't seen anything from the distillery itself that makes any kind of a claim like that. So I would say, to me, it definitely comes across as being majority sherry matured.
Yeah, it almost seems like 70.
I don't know for sure.
It seems almost like 70-30. I know normally that's kind of the golden rule is, blending in thirds. I think it seems like 30% bourbon, 70% sherry would be my guess. But if anybody knows, please leave a comment. We'd love to know, just for everybody that's part of the channel, just our general knowledge about it. So, without further ado, and enough blabbering, let's get into the nose. What do you get on the nose?
There's a lot of tropical fruits. A little bit of maybe guava, passion fruit.
For sure.
Some cherries, orange peel. There's also a good amount of spices, like nutmeg especially. There's definitely some nutmeg.
Yep.
A little allspice, maybe a little bit of cinnamon.
For sure.
I think there's a little bit of a white pepper quality too, a little bit peppery, just a hint of it anyway. A little bit of anise, licorice. It's kind of in the back end of the nose. It's kind of behind the fruity elements, but it's there.
Yeah, I put that in my palate. I actually put red bitter licorice. I got something like that for sure, but like more. Yeah. It's almost bitter. It wasn't like super sweet.
Right.
Anything else you get on the nose?
There's definitely some oak influence. I mean, it seems like I would say this is probably some pretty fresh casks they used. Like you said, we don't know the exact percentage of what type of cask, but I would say there's definitely some. I would think there's certainly some first fill sherry cask in here, if not a substantial amount.
Yeah.
There's definitely an oak quality, like a fresh oak quality that you get from first fill casks. A little bit of raisin. I have in my notes chocolate mint as well. I don't think I mentioned that. There's little mintiness, almost like what's the name of those chocolate mint candies? After Eight, is that what they're called?
You mean like the rectangle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forget what they're
Andes.
called. Andes. Yes, Andes.
Yeah.
That you get after you eat at a restaurant, typically. I don't know if they do that anymore, but they used to do that a lot in like the 90s and early 2000s. I don't see a whole lot of restaurants that do that anymore.
I can't tell you last time I had a restaurant give me one of those candies, but you're right. It definitely used to be very common.
So I definitely think there's a huge amount of sherry, but surprisingly the bourbon is pretty dominant for me. And I even made a note that it was almost, something about it reminds me of the Balvenie 15 single barrel, but almost, so imagine that, and then like you put a bunch of added light fruits on top of it. Like kind of like the Balvenie 15 bourbony single barrel in the background, and then like fruit was kind of on the surface of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
I got maraschino cherries, sherried raisins, peach and apricot. Not real strong, just mildly peach and apricot. Get that cocoa kind of chocolatey note. And again, like you said, I didn't find the nutmeg. I guess now that you say it, I see it. I got more allspice and clove, but as well as I do, cinnamon, allspice, clove, nutmeg, they all kind of run together.
Yeah, they do. Really, you can kind of say allspice, and it kind of. You know why allspice is called allspice?
No, why?
It's called allspice because like the European settlers or explorers who first found it in like Jamaica or whichever island where they first found it, thought that it smelled like a combination of nutmeg, cinnamon, and clove. So, which it kind of does. So when you say allspice, you kind of mean all those things. It is a little bit different, but it is kind of like that combination of those spices. So
that's awesome.
Usually, and I find a lot of the times when you find a spice note in a whiskey that's been sherry cask matured, you probably are going to have all those spices in there to a certain extent.
Yeah. If you say that,
sometimes cinnamon is a lot more dominant. I don't get a whole lot of cinnamon in this, but there is a little.
Yeah. What'd you get on the palate?
Well, let me try it. It's a lot of cocoa, chocolate malt, some raisin.
Have you had the Signet, the Glenmorangie Signet, that's kind of made out of like the chocolate malt?
Actually, I have not. No.
It's insanely overpriced. Quick shout out to Whiskey in the Six. I think he's a YouTube reviewer in Canada. He's a really nice guy, and he's got a channel, very successful channel. He just reviewed it, and I think we both agreed it's a really good dram, just insanely overpriced. But I think the special thing about it is it's a special type of malt, barley, and it's some kind of chocolate malt. I don't know all of the intricacies or the details about it, but you could definitely was like a super chocolatey dram for sure. If you have a chance to get it, at least once in your life, try it, because it is really good. But I definitely want to buy on a regular basis because of how overpriced it is. And actually,
it's expensive. I've thought about trying it too, but it's hard to find a lot of good reviews on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone personally that's tried it around here. So
maybe when we're out in the Hilton Head, if we find a store that has a decent price on it, we can go halvesies or even three ways with Tim if he's able to come. I actually think he's going to be able to come because I think that he's not going to be staying in the military. And actually, thinking of Whiskey in the Six, it reminded me, I actually wanted to make a point to give a shout out to two channels that have actually been there with me since the beginning and are very gracious. The first one is Malted in Montreal, Swami. He is one of the most amazing, just amazingly knowledgeable and a really kind guy. He's one of those guys that just really cares about the whiskey industry, the whiskey community. He could be the type of guy that's just like, oh, I want my channel, I don't want other people to do well, but he like goes out of his way to like promote my channel. He made a shout out in one of his Glendronach videos, and Swami, you're an amazing guy. I know I only have like 96 subscribers, but if you guys aren't already subscribed to him, go check him out. Malted in Montreal. Thanks again, Swami. And the next one is Trenny and C. They're two awesome guys. I believe they're from Canada as well. And they subscribed to me right at the very beginning, have been very kind and gracious. Little old me, when I had like 20 subscribers, they had no reason to be kind or even subscribe. But I just want to give a shout out to those two channels. So, what else you get on the palate?
Well, there's more fruits similar to the nose. Some pineapple, maybe mango.
Mm-hmm.
Again, some lighter fruits too. Well, you mentioned peaches on the nose. I think I get a little bit on the palate. Mango even. There's a little bit of spiciness on the back end, especially on the back end. Some rye comes out to me a little bit.
I can kind of see that.
Which I don't know where that's coming from, but I think that I get a little more of that bourbon influence on the back end. Some kind of bourbon smokiness from like a charred cask smokiness.
It seems like these are European. It seems like this might be European oak, because you get more of that bittery. I think that might be where kind of the rye smoky oaky taste. Like if it's
yeah, I mean the sherry cask, I'd imagine. I agree, it does seem like European oak, but I imagine the bourbon casks used were American
oak.
I mean,
but I think the sherry cask might be where that kind of more bitter, dark rye element could come from. Obviously, speculating. So I get on the palate cherry cordial, which I think is pretty fantastic. Toffee, like you get with pretty much almost every whiskey that's out there. Mild chocolate.
You can say toffee almost on any whiskey. It's almost,
no one's gonna argue.
Especially bourbon.
No one's gonna argue with you.
Yeah.
Mild chocolate. A little bit of honeyed biscuits, kind of malty note. And lastly, I get, like I said before, kind of a red bitter licorice. It's not real sweet, just kind of a bitter licorice.
Yeah, I definitely get some of that too. Well, it's more of a black licorice.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like black licorice at the end, at the end of the palate.
All right. What about on the finish?
The finish, the tropical fruits again are there for me in the finish. Actually, one thing I have down in my notes, well, I have dark honey, definitely some honey. I didn't really notice honey in the palate so much,
Mm-hmm.
but like right now I'm tasting honey for sure. It's like a similar, like if you have some like fresh local dark honey as opposed to like the kind of honey you get in most supermarkets, like honey you get from a farmer's market,
Yeah.
and you take a spoonful of it, and after you've swallowed it, that kind of honey, sweet, bitter honeyness that's just lingers for a while, which is quite a wonderful flavor, I think.
Yeah.
I get some of that.
I definitely get that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I definitely get where you're picking that up for sure.
Also, some more raisins and cherry. Another thing I have in my notes is soursop, which is a type of tropical fruit. Have you ever had soursop?
Where is it from?
It is. Well, I know it grows in Puerto Rico. That's where I first had it. It's a really good fruit juice. Last time I was in Puerto Rico, which was a few years ago, they had it at the hotel I was staying at. It was part of like the breakfast bar, and I also had a few cocktails made with soursop juice, and it's really delicious juice. I wish we could get it here more commonly. I actually had some recently at a restaurant around here, a Cuban restaurant. So I think it grows in several islands like Cuba, Puerto Rico, and probably other islands in that general area. It's a typical. It's hard to describe. It's if you were to taste it blind, you would probably say this is clearly some kind of tropical fruit juice, but almost like not quite like any you've had before. Like you probably identify it as tropical.
Really?
But it's not super sweet. It's not as sweet as some other tropical juices. It's a little got more depth to it. It's a whiskey drinker's tropical fruit juice.
I'll have to check it out for sure. So I don't know about you, but this is surprisingly a long finish for me. Like it kind of like comes on my lip and then it like explodes. And I don't really I'm not real good, to be honest with you, at kind of describing finishes. Like normally it doesn't stick around a lot. Normally I get the same thing that I get on the palate. But this like it starts out real mild and all of a sudden boom, it explodes into like this, like you said, honeyed. It doesn't taste like black tea, but kind of just how it coats your mouth when you've had black tea with honey poured in, like that kind of honeyed coat. And this like this explosion of like allspice. We're gonna say allspice since now I know it encompasses everything, so I can be, cover my bases and be right. So definitely allspice, that cinnamon, nutmeg, and a little bit of that licorice again at the end. I think this is a pretty good whiskey for the price. I think I picked this up for either $55 or $60. I think this is a steal at 48% ABV, non-chill filtered. We don't know about the coloring yet. I think it's a pretty dang good whiskey. What do you think?
I totally agree. It's about the same price for me, $55, $60, that general range. By the way, I agree. There's definitely more allspice on that finish. By the way, a couple other notes I didn't mention in the finish. I have in my notes aniseed, which again goes along with the black licorice, and candy corn, which I have that written down. I'm not getting that as much right now, but I do kind of.
No, I get it. I totally get that now that you say it. The power of suggestion.
And I agree. It is a surprisingly long finish. It's always hard to judge. I agree. The hardest thing to judge and review is the finish, especially the length, because I don't know, maybe some people sit there and like have a stopwatch in time, like okay, how long does this flavor stick around in my mouth? I've never done that, so like to me this seems like it's lingering for a very long time, so it does seem like a longer finish, but I don't really know what the cutoff point between saying it's a medium finish or it's a long finish.
Yeah, me neither. I kind of just go on my own opinion.
Yeah.
What do you? I normally give a score. We normally do a malted man cave mark. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and do that. What do you on a scale of 0 to 100? What do you think this is?
Yeah, and I do also score whiskeys that I review on my website. I think I might typically score things a little lower than you. So I don't know how much. I think we probably both are enjoying this whiskey about the same amount. I don't know if our scores are going to match up, but well, for instance, we've both reviewed Springbank 12 cask strength, and from watching your video on it, I think we probably have about the same opinion on it. I think you said it's your second favorite whiskey ever.
You're a little stingy with your marks.
It's one of probably my 3 or 4 favorite whiskeys ever too. You gave it a 95, I gave it a 92.
Yeah.
So that is to say, our marking system might be slightly different, but I would give this a very good 88 out of 100.
Yeah.
Which, especially for that price, I think is there aren't too many whiskeys in that price range that I would give that high of a score to.
Yeah.
I think it really is a great whiskey. Unfortunately, not very many stores around me carry it. There's only one store I know of right now in Middle Tennessee that actually has this in stock, and I don't know how easy it is to find around you. I don't know if it's a matter of Aberlour just doesn't make as much of this. I mean, the regular 12-year,
it's everywhere.
Doublewood, I think it's called. That's everywhere.
Yeah.
But the non-chill filter 12-year is not easy to find, and that's a shame because it really is a great whiskey. It's something I always want to have in stock.
Yeah.
It's just really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Pretty much year-round. Although I especially really like this. I think it's a really good Christmas time dram because you have those spices and some chocolate and raisin and cherry notes. Those, to me, I associate that more with the winter. I like sweeter whiskeys during the winter.
Really? Most people are kind of the opposite. They go, the peat bombs in the winter and more sherry.
I know a lot of people are that way, and I think I am in the minority, but I drink peated whiskey in the summer much more than I do in the winter.
Really?
Because to me, a lot of peated whiskeys also have something of a salinity that's ocean-like. What's the word? Like a coastal or what's the word I'm looking for? Marine notes.
So you enjoy that on the beach?
Probably because those distilleries are all sitting on the shore of Isla, and those things to me, I like those notes more in the summer for whatever reason. I actually just like spicier things in the summer and sweeter things in the winter because I find that sweet things warm you up more.
Yeah.
So I like sweet things in the winter.
Especially if you have a first fill Aberlour or a Boona, that'll warm you up real fast.
Yes. And actually, we should probably mention a Boona because personally, I like this better. I would take this over Boona almost any day.
Oh my! Wow.
I know. Again, I'm probably in the minority there, but especially recent bottlings of a Boona, to me, it's too young. They're bottling it too young. It's not mature enough. They're not letting it age long enough to get the depth of sherry notes that I wish that it would.
To me, this is like a baby Aboona. If I had to describe this, I would say a baby Aboona for me. I've heard some other people refer to it as that as well. I wonder if you just had a couple bad bottlings.
The ABV, but to me, this is more mature than a Aboona.
Really?
And to me, there's more depth, more complexity.
So we're actually pretty.
I'm probably very much in the minority. I know Aboona is what most people seem to prefer. I'd rather have this, and it's nearly half the price. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, we're actually pretty close on our scores. The Malted Man Cave mark for me is an 89 out of 100, and I agree with you. I'm pretty liberal with my markings, and some people they want to hold out, for their entire whiskey journey, and they know there could be so much better whiskeys, and I know that going in. I rate it as where I am in my journey of, single malt. So if it's that good to me, then I know in my mind, this could eventually, even though it's, Springbank cask strength, 12 is a 97 or whatever I said, 96. I know that may end up being a 92 3 years from now when I've had even way better whiskey. So,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just a nice guy for the whiskey companies. So we
Well,
better.
We're probably not all that far apart. And in hindsight, I think I should have actually given that Springbank cast strength a little bit higher than 92. I think sometimes
So
I
good.
agree. Sometimes I am a little bit overly critical when it comes to scoring, where I could easily give things a little bit higher mark.
You've been watching Ralphie too much. That's your problem.
Maybe.
Hey, we learn from the best.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Jonathan, we gotta do this again sometime, man.
Absolutely, this is fun.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in Hilton Head. Sláinte to you, my cousin.
Once again, meadmule.com. Check it out.
All right. See you, man. Sláinte.
Bye.